and welcome to Changemakers, a podcast from Civil Service World. I'm Suzannah Brecknell, Editor-in-Chief of Civil Service World, and in this series, I'm meeting people who are doing innovative things, making change happen across government. Our aim is not just to talk about what people are doing, but how they are doing it, to get under the skin of innovation and pull out practical tips and inspiration for our listeners. In this extended episode, which is sponsored by Capita, we're thinking about what an AI-ready workforce would look like in terms of skills, culture, and leadership. I'm joined today by Heidi Edwards, who is Assistant Head of AI Skills and Talent, Defence AI Centre, Ministry of Defence, and by Olivia Lory, Director of Workforce Development at Capita. Heidi, tell us first of all about the context of learning in the MOD. There's a broader change process going on that your work sits within. Can you explain it, please?
Hi, Suzannah. So I've been in Defence for 12 months now. And when I landed into Defence, they were moving to a new target operating model for Defence learning. That's a move to scalable, accessible learning content on demand, which is a shift away from the traditional approach of face-to-face learning. I saw this as a great opportunity for me to come in and build a centre of expertise because that was the ambition, that was the mission. And I trailblazed setting up the Centre of Expertise because of my knowledge and experience in academy approach to learning.
Okay, so you've kind of hinted at my next question there. But we go back to the start of the project. You're quite new in the MOD, you're in charge of AI skills, and you're tasked with starting this Centre of Expertise from scratch. But you have a pretty good idea of what you need to do and what's going to work. So tell us why that is. Why do you know what to do?
So from my experience in HMRC, they had a very similar learning model, which was an academy approach, which again, scalable, accessible learning content on demand. And from setting up a flagship cloud academy, I was able to work with tech industry very closely, bringing in the very best learning content into the academy, which actually was extremely successful. And we were able to put on learning clubs to support certification and build credibility, confidence and capability into the organisation and the individuals, which was extremely successful.
Yeah, great. I mean, great to bring that experience from HMRC and to have that proven record of knowing what works. Obviously, though, the skills that are needed in defence aren't quite the same as the ones that are needed in HMRC. So can you tell us, you know about the platform, how do you go about mapping out the kind of personas that you would need and explain what the personas are, what that means, and how do you think about building content for your centre of expertise?
So I had a diverse, large audience to upskill in AI and build AI fluency across MOD. MOD is very different to anywhere I've worked before. It's like a microcosm of society. We've got doctors, dentists, warfighters, civil servants. It was such a broad area to upskill. So I decided to devise a persona-based learning intervention, and that's a way to target an audience to this learning. It was 5 dimensions to the corresponding framework. There was an AI explorer, AI business operator, AI warfighter, AI professional, and AI senior leader. And I devised the learning content to be a micro-learning intervention. And because I know everybody's super busy, so it was a way to upskill, but with further learning content, if people wanted to do more, that they could do. Our ambition is to reduce explorers. So we don't want people that don't know about AI and to grow our homegrown talent to develop those professionals. And the government has an ambition for 1 in 10 to be a digital professional now. So we're really getting after that mission.
So I'm interested, you've spoken about the kind of reducing explorers, which to do that relies first of all on knowing where the explorers are, how many have you got, and tracking them moving up. So I'm interested in something you did both to gather data about the skills you had and to promote the new platform. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I set up a community of practice and I invited people to join the community of practice. And I did a capability survey, which then looked at the whole capability of the organisation with AI. It came out that a lot of people were either an explorer or a professional. So we had this kind of huge gap that I needed to kind of fill in between. So from this, I could then direct people to the audience. And we also made our own videos, which hopefully helped provide learning content to break down the terminology of AI and upskill people in a rapid way.
I like that the survey kind of pointed people to what they needed to do next. So there was a benefit to them in taking part.
Absolutely.
What else have you been doing to raise awareness of the offering? Because obviously it's one thing to have all that skills content and all that academy content there, but you actually need people to engage with it to achieve results.
Absolutely. So the Centre of Expertise, I've been promoting it wherever I can. We've had 5,000 learners in 5 months, which is pretty phenomenal. I had a community of practice that I set up. We've got 1,600 people in the community of practice. I've been joining other communities of practice across MOD and kind of sharing the news and promoting it at presentations and talks as well. So we've done a whole load of marketing to get people involved, and community learning initiatives to kind of break down the content. So that's been really successful as well, getting our own DAIC, Defence Artificial Intelligence Centre experts in to kind of provide video knowledge and upskilling.
And you mentioned the number of learners in the last 5 months, but how are you kind of evaluating progress? Obviously, that's one signifier.
Sure.
How else are you tracking?
From the new learning platform, I can evaluate the learning initiatives, so I can pull metrics each month of how many learners have consumed the content and completed it. So we're closely monitoring that each month and reporting that up as a success.
Okay, great. And looking back at the process of building it and rolling it out, I know it's early days, would you have done anything differently?
I think I would have liked to get an endorsement from somebody very senior to explain why this AI fluency is so important to the organisation. I think that would have aided some traction.
That's something we hear quite often, really. It's the kind of the importance of senior champions and the kind of need to invest in building that relationship. So what was the biggest surprise for you as you worked on this project?
The biggest surprise for me is that people have been scared to use AI, that they think AI is going to take their job. So it's been alleviating people's fears. And people are worried that using AI, that they're going to get into trouble, that, you know, that the AI will give them the wrong outputs and that they may use it. So teaching people to use AI effectively, safely and responsibly in MOD is weaved through all our learning content. And providing people with that knowledge to check the outputs, and that the AI will have hallucinations, and to be able to empower people to use AI safely and responsibly has been weaved through all our content, and we're really championing that.
And what's next for the work?
What's next? Okay, so we've just had the big strategic defence review. So we are really focused on skills and talent to enable that and move that forward. So we're very much on our digital transformation. I believe AI is going to be the bedrock of that kind of digital transformation for defence. I'm championing AI fluency across defence, so people understand and improving the literacy levels at all levels and improving our operational effectiveness. And people are really at the heart of this mission. So Defence are really passionate about modernising the workplace and transforming to a learning organisation. And this is a catalyst for change, and it's a super exciting time to be in Defence.
It sounds it. And I as I say, I really am impressed by the way you're taking such a huge and traditional kind of organisations, the MOD, and bringing a new way of building skills, a new way of learning into that culture.
I'm trying to bring a culture of innovation into Defence.
Yeah.
And we've got one big thing coming up in September, October. So my team are really helping out and leaning in on that to build an AI savvy workforce that is confident in checking AI outputs.
I'll bring in you, Olivia. We've heard about the kind of organisational context that Heidi's working in the MOD. Can you tell us more about the context from your kind of perspective across different partners and sectors, the context that big organisations like the MOD, like the civil service, are working in now?
So to follow Heidi's point, it's a hugely exciting time. It's also a time where there is anxiety, there is uncertainty, there is a lot of change. There's a lot of change to absorb. Organisations, I think, are gearing themselves up for that, organising themselves accordingly. But the context has changed, I think, organisationally quite significantly. In a civil service context, I recently came across a term, BANI. It wasn't one that I'd heard of before. I was used to hearing VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Acronyms are helpful, I think, in a context of understanding the sorts of challenges that both organisations, teams and individuals face. BANI stands for brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible.
Okay.
And whilst those terms may on the face of it feel daunting, I think there are some nuggets that can contextualise some of the change and change challenge that organisations have, and indeed some of the responses to that. And just by way of background, I mean, VUCA came out of a defence context back in the 80s, the 90s, 2000s. This new term arrived during the pandemic, looking at climate change, coined by a futurist, Changemakers, in 2020. And so some of the strategies that I think organisations are now adopting to be able to both take the benefit of these changes, but also handle some of the complexities, some of the navigation points, the Bainey framework is actually quite helpful for, because it promotes things like, incomprehensibility. We need to break stuff down. We need to get more agile about responding to. There needs to be more individual ownership. There needs to be more organizational agility. You need absolute leadership to be able to help set that context. And that, like everything, there are detractors to this idea. I think one of the really interesting counterpoints to the idea of brittle, anxious, incomprehensible environments is the idea of, anti-fragile organizations, organizations that are building capability, are building through being able to practice things differently, build muscle memory. And I see very much the civil service and public sector organizations as being a part of.
I guess that's what we're trying to kind of get to the heart of, is building a culture in an organization where it is anti-fragile and able to kind of move with the times. Tell us a bit about Capita's kind of journey of transformation and how learning and workforce development is playing into that.
So I think starting, Heidi, you mentioned senior endorsement. I mean, we've been really fortunate in having the leadership of Adolfo Hernandez, who came into our organisation a couple of years ago. He was quite categorical from the outset that we, as an organisation that serve a wide range of customers, public sector, private sector, AI is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to enable our workforces, help our client organisations, and really decode quite practically what that means. If you're a large delivery organisation like Capita, managing complex contracts, managing, sensitive data, managing and helping to make, in a public sector context, citizens' lives better, you have a huge responsibility. So for us, we have set about this journey quite consciously. It's meant that we've had senior leadership buy-in right from the top. We have a data AI academy, similar to the model that Heidi's talking about, and really building that through a series of both technical pathways, but also very much weaving in leadership and management throughout. And I think one of the things that we are noticing is that, as a large organisation, our experience is, some of the challenges that we have faced are similar challenges to client organisations. And so one of the aspects that we're looking at is ourselves as customer zero. How can our own transformation be of interest and benefit to those clients that we work with? Taking into account all organisations are unique, so you're never going to say, right, what's appropriate here is appropriate there. And actually, if I think about some of the case studies that we have working with those organisations, it's only ever effective when you can, I think you used the term, Heidi, of looking at capability sort of diagnostic. We'll always equally understand what the actual problem is, because the solutions are always different. Sometimes it might be a leadership challenge, other times it might be a skill or capability building challenge. But that experience that we have had in our own transformation journey is proving to be, a helpful dialogue point in order to be able to help client organisations on their own journey.
Yeah. I'm interested in, so these terms, workforce development and learning, we've kind of used them through the conversation. Interested in your thoughts on the difference between them and how they interact together sort of in a change journey. Heidi, have you got some thoughts?
So for me, workforce planning is about looking at the skills and the roles that we need for the future and how we get after that. It's actually targeting people to effectively move into those roles and offering them a new career pathway. And then putting people on a high-performance learning journey and making sure they have intentionality about that learning and that they're committed to it, because they're more likely to succeed. That's what I feel, rather than just mandatory learning, which is something that you have to do as part of your job.
And I think from our side, we've been quite conscious about we are a learning organisation, have deep capability with learning content expertise. Workforce development is, I think to Heidi's point, it's that more holistic context, talent development, but really addressing the challenges that organisations face, which aren't learning challenges. They might be leadership challenges. They might be management challenges. And when AI comes into the mix, it throws a whole lot of that, right up in the air, and then you've got to reassess and look quite practically at what it means. and keeping that holistic framing is more helpful.
Yeah, thank you. That's a helpful kind of framing for them both. What do you've spoken about the kind of BANI context that we're working in, and there's obviously a lot of change in defence and everywhere in government at the moment. What is the learning culture that you think we need to thrive as individuals and organisations in this context?
So I would say that you need to move to an always learning culture. Learning can't be seen as something that you do frequently. It needs to be part of your everyday and intrinsically matched into your day and a requirement for your work. I think leaders need to be active and visible of empowering people to have that time to learn. I've done learning initiatives like Empower Hour or, a Festival of Learning where everybody stops and learns. Now, that's quite difficult to do, but having that open dialogue with managers and leaders about how important it is for our people to learn and grow is a huge part of that, I feel. And in the civil service, we have 5 days professional development learning a year. I'd advocate for everybody to use that, maximize it, and try and get more than that, because obviously when you learn, you grow your capabilities, your digital skills will enhance, and you will become more sought after in the market.
Anything to add on that, Olivia, especially around, I guess, the leadership that is required?
Yeah, I mean, I think leadership is that essential element. It's required not just to help organizations navigate through, but when it comes to AI, we talk internally about building AI muscle every day. Going back to the idea of anti-fragility, muscles are things that when you break them, they grow stronger, they don't get weaker. And so you have to be very conscious about practicing these skills and be seen to be practicing these skills. And as leaders, be comfortable with not necessarily knowing all the answers. I think the other reason why, learning is so important, specifically in an AI context, is that half-life of skills. So Heidi and I were talking earlier today around when the half-life, which effectively means the skill you learn today, how relevant is it going to be across a time period? The half-life for skills in AI in these technical areas is about, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, which means that if you're learning something now in 2 or 3 or 4 years, that skill is going to be not the same skill you need. And so there is no way that you can ever keep ahead of that type of change trajectory except by constantly learning. And learning how to learn, I think, is probably the key skill. And for leaders, role modelling that.
Yeah, and I think as the pace of learning accelerates, I think AI can really help turn that digital skills gap into a gateway to get after that.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it all comes back also to your point, Hayley, around people are afraid of using AI because they don't know, they might think they might get it wrong. And so that centrality of using it responsibly, using it, appropriately, that's a skill that will last, even as the tech changes. So I think that's really interesting to bring that back. I also wanted to pick up the sort of battle for skills idea. You mentioned that, growing skills will help you make you more sought after. Mostly organizations think about this kind of talent war. You've got capability gaps, you're trying to get the right people. Should we be thinking of this as a battle? Is it a helpful way to think about workforce development?
I think it is, definitely. And I think we're all trying to fish from the same pool. A lot of organisations go after STEM students. I want to change that. I think in civil service and defence particularly, we need to be looking at the broader ocean rather than this puddle that we're all trying to fish out of. So for me, it's about if people have a passion for technology, do they want to learn a new skill? Can they have that capability? Can we upskill them? So I really want to change the thought process around how we get after our talent, but much wider than STEM.
And what about you, Olivia? What's your...
Well, funnily enough, I'm obviously working in an organisation with many defence colleagues and indeed many defence clients. I'm quite comfortable with, the battle for skills. What it doesn't capture for me, though, is the attractiveness element of, as organisations, it's beholden on us to also be attractive to people, to want to join us. And it's the one thing I think the civil service in particular, public sector in particular, has such a strong story to tell. And so for me, it's more about ecosystems. It's more about building capability in a way that complements other, working in partnership, but for the individual to think, what's my contribution to that?
And I think it also adds to the employee value proposition for defence. I really want people to start seeing defence as an employer of choice for a tech career, and how we get after that and model that is really. I'm really passionate about that.
Thank you. If I could ask you both, I'm asking all guests on Changemakers for final thought on advice on driving change. But because we've been talking about learning, I wanted to ask you guys just for a reflection on how our listeners can think about building the right learning culture in their team or for themselves that will support them when they're driving change.
Oh, I get to start. I think it's going back to learning science, really. Humans are innately hardwired to learn. It is our superpower. It's the reason we've adapted as well. It's the reason we're, contrary to the idea of Bainey, actually the pandemic showed that humans could be super resourceful, super able to overcome challenge. And curiosity, the ability to be able to, pick up a new skill, get after it, but celebrate really what we have inside us innately to be able to drive that change in a time of great opportunity.
I'd say learn and be curious. I learned about cloud computing probably about 5 years ago. It changed my life. It changed my career. So I'm really passionate about helping other women get into tech. I've done community learning initiatives where we break things down, such as an hour on cloud, an hour on AI, an hour on security and power apps. And that's about empowering women to break down the barriers to get into tech and to pivot into a new career and enable them to have that zigzag career, which we talk about a lot. So yeah, learn and be curious would be my slogan.
And you can't ever keep up with this. There's no sort of end state to it. So start today.
Thank you, Heidi and Olivia, for joining me. And thank you to all of you for listening. Do subscribe to the Civil Service Word podcast so that you will receive the next episode of Changemakers and all of our other civil service related podcasts directly to your feed.